All right. Now, with the cost of living continuing to rise, a growing number of young Australians are using salary sacrificing to save thousands of dollars each year and make their pay packet stretch further. Yet, so many don't realize it's actually available to them. Now, when we mention salary sacrificing, many of us might assume that we're referring to sacrificing your take home pay into your super. But depending on which industry you work in, you may actually be able to salary sacrifice into other things such as cars, groceries, petrol, rent, home loan repayments. The list goes on. Joining us to discuss is Mike Daly from Smart, one of Australia's leading salary packaging providers. G'day, Mike. Welcome to the Savings Tip Jar.
Dom, thanks so much for having me. Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. So before we jump into this salary packaging chat, as we always do on this segment nowadays, we talk about savings tips. So do you have a savings tip for us?
Hey, Harrison, thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, absolutely do. I think number one is just to have a goal. So whatever you're saving for is just to understand what it is, how much you're going to need and when you need that money by. So I know my wife and I have been guilty of it in the past. You get so tied up in life and you just cruise through and nothing ends up happening. There's no money accumulating in your account. But as soon as you have a bit of a focus on what you want to save for, then, it makes the world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, without goals, we'd all be pretty aimless. So definitely setting out goals when it comes to saving can really
and it can also be fun
that.
goals too, right? It can be, not just saving for a house, but it can be, saving for a holiday. That's a goal.
Absolutely. Yep.
Now, getting into today's topic, Mike, salary sacrificing. It sounds great in terms of the savings it generates, but why do you think more people aren't doing it?
Yeah, we're in a really interesting time at the moment, Dom, where there are so many scams out there these days that people are pretty suspicious. And what we do, honestly, comes across as seeming like it can be too good to be true. So there are a lot of people who are cautious about anything that sounds too good to be true, and that's certainly, when we're telling you that you can pay less of the money that you earn to the tax man, so you get to keep more of it for yourself. That certainly is what it can look like. The other side of it is just people not being aware of what they can salary package. So certainly something we'd encourage people to look into.
Yeah, for sure. Now, a lot of people don't really know what it means, and they might see like the reduction in their take-home income, and I don't know, be like steer clear of it a little bit. But let's just talk about the benefits of salary packaging. Just give us the rundown on what it means for your tax at the end of financial year.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on who you work for. So salary packaging isn't just one thing. So salary packaging changes depending on who you work for. I guess different groups in our society, different types of employers are allowed different levels of salary packaging benefit. The highest level of benefit is reserved for someone who works for a not-for-profit organisation. So think of St. Vincent's, think of Blue Care, those kinds of organisations that do really great work in our community. The highest level of salary packaging benefit are reserved to people who work for those organisations. Now, if you do work for one of those, then you'll have the ability to salary package maybe $15,900 per year, which is pretty incredible. Taxman says as a bit of a perk for working with these organisations that you get to pay less tax. So $15,900 completely tax-free. And the savings of that over a year, if you're paying 30% tax, you're looking at a saving over $5,000, which is nothing to sneeze at, absolutely. The next kind of level down is going to be someone who works in our health sector. So they would have an amount of about $9,010. And then for everyone else who works, I guess, just in normal corporate or government kind of jobs, then you might be looking at salary packaging things like portable electronic devices. Novated leases, cars are certainly a huge benefit these days as well. So what you can salary package is quite specific to who you work for, but it can be pretty incredible.
I wonder, Mike, if there's a bit of an element of people just being, just finding finance in general quite overwhelming and confusing, and when they start working for a for profit or a public institution, and they see all this documentation about salary packaging. And they just think, I don't know what that is. I'm seeing lots of terminology that I don't know. And perhaps that's why, because in my personal experience anyway, like my partner actually works for a not-for-profit, and initially she had all this documentation provided to her and just couldn't wrap her head around it. And even me, someone that works in finance, I had to read through it quite a few times before I was like, okay, I think I get it. I think I get how
Yeah,
it works. But it did seem too good to be true. I was like, surely this, because being a not-for-profit, it was over 15,000 salary sacrifice
yeah,
into our mortgage.
yeah.
And I'd never really heard of this before, and I just couldn't believe how much now we're saving, like you said, over 5K in tax. So do you think that's a thing? I mean, you're the sort of in charge of education, customer education
Yeah.
at Smart. So do you find that is the case? People are just feeling a bit overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so my role, I guess, with Smart is customer education specialist. So my job is to go around to these workplaces and to hold information sessions or appointments to try and help people understand what the benefit is, how it works, and that it actually is not a scam. This is real. This is available to people right now. I think generally people who work in the not-for-profit or organisations in that kind of space usually will have about 60 to 70% of their staff actively participating, which to me seems really low. And Dom, I'm sure having had experience with this now, you'll understand the benefits, and you're like, well, why isn't everyone doing this, right? It can be a huge benefit, but that's certainly why my job's pretty popular these days, because going around to these workplaces and genuinely answering questions for these people about how it all works is really important in trying to educate people, and certainly speaking to you guys today is a great way that we can try and help people understand what it's all about.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. What I want to know is, like, what's the sort of philosophy around salary sacrificing? Now, you mentioned the not-for-profit sector. Is it because their salaries, can't compete with the private industry? Is that why there's tax breaks for them, or is it
Yeah.
just, they figure you're doing kind of good work in that sector?
Well, it's probably a little bit of A and a little bit of B, really. So generally understanding that people who also not-for-profit organisations are generally going to find it more difficult to compete in the labour market, and it's a pretty tight labour market at the moment. What were the latest statistics out? We're at like 2 or 3% unemployment rate, right? So trying to encourage people to work for these organisations, money is certainly part of it, and if they can't pay people the same as what they might be able to get in the corporate world, then one way of increasing their take-home pay is to allow them to pay less of what they earn as tax. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it, absolutely, and it's a really important part of it.
And now, Mike, are there many private sector companies that are getting on board with salary packaging? I mean, I understand they're perhaps reluctant to, because it does mean that they accrue fringe benefits tax. But do you have many clients that are in the private sector?
Yeah, lots of private sector clients, particularly offering novated leasing. So novated leasing, I guess, is one of the most common salary packaging benefits because it's available across all industries. So when I was talking before about the 15,900 not-for-profits, they also get novated leasing as well. But novated leasing is available as it's like the common denominator of salary packaging. It's available to everyone. And because leasing is so popular, it's really important, from, again, going back to the labour market, that if you're trying to attract people over to your organisation, that you've got as many perks as you possibly can offer. And being able to offer somebody a novated lease, or the ability to bring the lease that they currently have with their employer over and join your team, is certainly a really important benefit to offer. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, novated leases is kind of a funny one. It's probably the most often asked question of me. If I'm in the back of an Uber or talking with friends and family, I say what I do. I work in financial services. I work for a financial comparison site. I have a finance podcast where we talk with experts. Half the time at least, it's, what about novated leases? Are they a good deal? And I'm quite often stumped because I just haven't really like covered it before, but I'm going to ask you this question. Is novated leasing worth it? To all the friends and family that have asked me that, when does it become worth it? Is it the value of the car? Is it your income? How does that sort of work with salary packaging?
Yeah, and Harrison, you're speaking to someone who has 2 leases. So yeah, I practice what I preach. I'm actually not allowed to salary package really much else apart from a novated lease, so I don't get access to that $15,900. So it's actually a bit of a bitter pill for me to swallow, because I've got to tell everyone else how awesome it is, and I'm not allowed to do it myself. But novated leasing is a fantastic benefit. Really easy way to think about it is it's a type of finance that you use to buy a car. Could be new or used. Could even be one that you have at the moment. What we do is act as a budgeting service. So we work with you to develop a per pay budget that's going to cover all of the running costs for your car. So fuel, rego, insurance, servicing, tyres, roadside assistance. And we work out how much all of that's going to cost, and we divide it into neat little per pay deductions, and we ask your payroll to send us that money directly. So think about it like forced savings. You're just putting money into your leasing account, waiting for that bill to arrive, and when that bill is due, we pay it directly on your behalf from the money that we've diligently been collecting over the previous period of time, might be 12 months or so. If it's a petrol or diesel car, and the way that this has worked forever is that some of the money is going to be sent across out of your pre-tax pay, and some would be sent as an after-tax payment. So a taxman kind of says, listen, you can have some pre-tax money, but because it's your own personal private use vehicle, you can't use all pre-tax pay. That is, unless now it is an electric vehicle, with the government trying to encourage us all to move that way. They introduced some new legislation a couple of years ago, which basically means if you salary package an electric car, it's now 100% pre-tax. So all of your finance payments, all of your electricity to charge it, rego, insurance, tyres, 100% pre-tax, which is incredible.
There you go, Haz. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just say if it's worth it, well and truly, if you're going to buy an electric vehicle.
Yeah, and look, using pre-tax money is one saving, but there's actually multiple ways that you save with a novated lease. Another of those is that you don't pay GST on any of the running costs that you have. So your fuel, you might spend $120 to fill up your car. Well, being GST free means that you save $12 every time you fill up your car, which might not seem like a lot of money, but when you multiply it over the number of tanks of fuel that you put in over, however many years you have that car for, it is going to add up to something pretty substantial. And then the other factor is that you don't pay GST on the purchase price of your car either. So your car is 10% cheaper just because you're getting it through a novated lease.
Well, there you go. Thanks for passing on that information, Mike. I'm sure all of Harrison's future Uber drivers will appreciate now that he's able to, fill the air with knowledge about novated leasing.
And I'll just tell him to go to this podcast, episode 97 with Mike Daly.
Plug. Yeah, or you can put it on while you're in the car.
Exactly.
So no more awkward silences in the back of an Uber for Harrison. Mike, really appreciate your time here on the Savings Tip Jar podcast. Really appreciate your insights. Thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.